Hi guys, in this video I want to talk about the new live and dynamic activity maps that we have in ExtraHop and how that can help you understand the flow end to end for an application. I'm running this in my home lab right now, and what you're looking at is an application called WebTrees, which is a family tree application that has a front end web component and a backend MySQL database server. And I decided to publish this application through Citrix just to show you an end-to-end, including Citrix Zen app infrastructure. And basically, a user would come in through a NetScaler, through SSL, uh, you know, go onto the Citrix storefront, ask for Internet Explorer, and from there, they're going to get an ICA file and they're going to start to interact with the XenApp farm. The XenApp farm gives them an ICA file, they open it, and then from then on, they have a machine on XenApp farm that will talk to my front end web server and to the backend database server. So this is a typical scenario that you would have in an environment. In my case, for this lab environment, my PC is actually on the LAN and I'm accessing it without a NetScaler. So I'm going straight to the storefront and asking for Internet Explorer from there. The ExtraHop deployment is simple. I have a virtual Discover appliance that has a feed from a virtual switch in the ESXi host that I have all these servers sitting in, and I'm getting a same feed into the trace appliance for the continuous packet capture, and I'm feeding the ExtraHop Explorer appliance all the records, and everything is viewed on the command appliance using my Mac. So let's go through the process of asking for the Internet Explorer app and working with WebTrees, and then we're going to go into the live activity maps and finally end off with a dashboard for performance. So going over to Citrix Storefront, logging in, I'm going to be presented with uh, a Zen desktop for VDI, but I'm more interested here in the Internet Explorer app for Zen app, and just choose Internet Explorer. You're going to get the ICA file. You're going to open the ICA file, and it will open Citrix Receiver, and the application will start to launch. Just give it a second here too. Oh, opened in another window. Excuse me. So we're going to go straight to the WebTrees application, the one that I talked about earlier for the family tree. I'm going to log in. And I'm just going to generate a few database records. So just go onto my profile and introduce you guys to my family. Here's my wife and my two boys, Lucas and Daniel. So, we ran some records here off of the MySQL database, and I'm going to close this session. Now let's pivot over to the ExtraHop the command appliance once again, and here we've got the an overview of the different components, like I mentioned before. So as a storefront here, I want to look at the performance for it in terms of web processing time, and then you got the Zen app, Citrix Zen app server right here, different Citrix metrics, and then you got the front-end web server for WebTree, and then the back-end MySQL database. So just looking at timing overview and errors overview, and we have a dashboard for the performance of this application. But what I want to do is I want to go straight to the activity map, and then we can come back to look at some of the performance. So the Mac computer that I'm on right now is this computer called Gabrium, and what I'm doing is I'm going to start from here, and I'm going to create an activity map starting with the client machine. So I'll make this a bit bigger. So with live activity maps, this is happening in real time, and the beauty about it is that you can actually see the flow of traffic from clients to servers. So here's my machine, the 1.100, and it's actually uh, talking on different protocols. So it's doing DNS calls to my DNS server. Here's the SSL connection to the ExtraHop command appliance. Here's the connection to the Citrix storefront. You can see it's a client, web client of Citrix storefront server. Um, doing RDP, I was doing RDP earlier to the delivery controller, and then most importantly is the ICA session that's happening with XenApp, uh, with the XenApp server. Notice the thickness of the line indicates uh, that there are more bytes flowing between two machines. So it's volumetric data. You can change it to connections or TCP turns if you wish. And then notice we're going to go hop by hop, crossing different protocols to get an end-to-end view of how this application works. So sort of a application dependency map. Here I'm looking at starting from my machine, the Mac, to all peers, but I could be a little more specific and say, well, I'm only interested in seeing which XenApp servers I'm actually connected to, and this will filter over to only the ICA connection that we saw earlier. And from here, I can say, well, I want to hop over to my web connection to my front-end web server for web trees. In this case, I'm going to say, show me all web servers as the next hop. Uh, and from here, you can see here's where I started from my Mac to XenApp, and then and from here to my front-end web server. And then I can add another hop, which is the final hop to my database server. And after you do that, it's going to clean things up. So once again, here's the end-to-end flow, starting from my Mac, ICA to my XenApp server, and then XenApp server does a front-end web call to my web server, and then over back to the database where I was pulling the records. You can also notice that there is the connection here from the Citrix delivery controller to the backend Citrix Microsoft SQL database as well. That also got pulled. But I'm interested in really in this flow. And if you click on any of these lines, you can actually do a few things. You can see, you can pivot over to device A or device B in the connection, or you can actually go into the records. So if I click on the records here, I'm going to see in the last half hour all database records that occurred between my client web server and my server here, the database server. So you can see the IP addresses, the host names, what methods were used, the name of the database, the actual SQL statements that were issued, the user, how long each query took on the wire, and bits and bytes that were flowing through. And you can filter by method, you can filter in a number of ways. Not only that, with one click, we can go straight to the packets and notice the workflow. It's important here. We start off with an activity map or a dashboard. We can pivot over to the actual records themselves, and with one click, we can obtain a downloadable PCAP, only 46 packets that occurred between your source IP and source port, destination IP and destination port, specific to those transactions that were of interest. Right away, you can download that and you can investigate it further. So hopefully this sheds some light on the live activity maps and how you can use them. And then one last thing I want to talk about is the performance dashboard. So once again, you can put this dashboard together where you can break down the application by its different tiers. So you can see once again, the overview of timing metrics for each one of those hops, starting with XenApp, how long did it take to load the Internet Explorer application, what was the latency, looking at the Citrix storefront, what's the processing time for it, and then your front end web and back end database, what was the processing time for these, in addition to the network time, round trip time for each one of those components, and finally looking at errors for any of those. I did abort a couple of sessions for Citrix, that's why you see these two aborts here prior to the recording. And then you can go down and start to look at the actual tiers themselves one by one. So starting with the Citrix Access Portal, which is the storefront, looking at number of responses, if there were any errors, processing time, round trip time for that specific tier. Then down to the Citrix level, you can see the users that came in. This is through XenApp. This is me launching a desktop VDI. And then you can see again the client latency, latency by application, latency by user, which machines came in and launched Citrix sessions. And then the web tier next, which is the front end for the WebTrees application. You can see the URIs, server responses by URIs that were accessed. If there were any errors, will show up here. The processing time per URI. And finally, the last tier of the application is the database tier, looking at how many requests, responses, if there were any errors, the performance breakdown, by round trip time, processing time, and then what user was accessing the database, and so on. So hopefully this has been helpful for you to understand how we can break an application by its different tiers and how we can use activity maps to view end-to-end connectivity and the application dependencies. Thank you for watching.